Yes, it's Hollie's Hotspurs back with another one. Chatting all things Tottenham, we're second to none. Special guests every time, if it's win, lose or draw. The passion is high like Harry Kane when he scores. Or when Lloris makes a world-class save. We got Højbjerg running the mid every game. Settle down, stick around, share your thoughts with the panel. And make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Coys.
Hello and welcome to another Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where today it's happening on a Tuesday. It doesn't really feel right, but here we are because we couldn't not miss talking about what is currently going on at our club at the moment, because I'll tell you what, I'm a bit lost and a bit baffled. But we're here tonight to have a good therapy session and dissect the game on Saturday and everything else that's currently going on. But with me tonight to do so, I am joined by two fabulous guests. First of all, Wes, thank you for coming onto the channel. Welcome back. Sorry, it's a bit in turmoil at the moment at the club, but welcome.
I feel like I'm either last minute on super sub duty or I come in when we're in a crisis. Like, can you not get me on after a win for a change, Hollie? That would be nice. But no, obviously, thank you for having me as always. And yeah, looking forward to getting my teeth into this one.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot more than teeth. I think there's going to be a lot of chat going on tonight. But Connor as well, thank you for coming back on the channel. Like I said, I'm very sorry. Again, it's turmoil tonight.
Oh, it's not your fault. It's those at the top, isn't it? It's just constant turmoil at the minute. I wish there was more happiness at our football club right now. Sadly not. But I'm going to look forward to the mess that we're going to unpack. It's going to be great.
It is. And like you, Jay is already in with some... we know that's sarcasm at its finest. But no, thank you to everybody that's joining, that's watching, that's going to rewatch this, because I think, like I said, I think a good therapy session tonight is needed. But before we get on to everything that's currently going on, I think we need to start, obviously, with the game that kind of set it all off, Wes. And that is the fact that we drew away to Southampton, who are, by the way, bottom of the table. So just give me your kind of roundup of that game before we kind of go into it and dissect it.
Well, it was quite interesting. I think it's quite interesting, Hollie, because probably this is one of the first times where you've been to a game and I haven't. So you're probably better off talking about it than me. But obviously, I caught up with the highlights on Match of the Day, and just seemed really baffling. Like, you're 3-1 up in any game, regardless of who you're playing against, bottom of the league, top of the league, whoever. If it's a derby or whatever, and it's like we just decided to just revert back and play really, really deep and just sit in our formation. And it was like, hold on a minute, there was a really good opportunity there to actually boost our goal difference. It really hit Southampton for sort of 4 or 5, and for some bizarre reason it just didn't happen. Now, I don't know if that is down to the manager himself, if that's players just reverting back to type. It feels like it was a bit of both. But then, having seen some snippets of Conte, he's basically saying to the players, wake up and sort yourself out. Because look at Uncle Albert.
He's loving this, isn't he?
He is. But yeah, it just seemed so bizarre. I know we've been in games where, we've been into, a comfortable lead and things like that. And then, the opposition get one, or even if you look at the Forest game, we're 3-1 up there, they get a penalty. And obviously Big Fraze saves that one. But you're thinking, well, if that goes in, that's sort of squeaky bum time at that point. But yeah, just really, really strange behaviour, I think, from everybody on Saturday. And that's the best way I can sum it up, I suppose.
I think that is the only way you can kind of sum it up. And it just kind of capitulated. I don't know what you kind of thought, kind of, give me a brief summary of how that game went, because I know you were there as well. And it was just, considering the nightmare it was to get from London to Southampton, you would have thought the players would have held on to that lead. It just doesn't make sense.
Oh, to be honest, it's the same over and over, isn't it? It's that thing I say, there is no other football club in the world that is known as Spursy. There's not a United-y or anything like that. We are our own entity for that. In terms of what went wrong, I think Conte summed it up perfectly, to be honest. It's constant belief in the squad of, we must be the only football team in the world. I mean, that where the fans are probably not even comfortable when we're three goals up. Do you know what I mean? I mean, for example, West Ham. You know what I mean? The 3-all with West Ham. So, for me, it's just the same stuff. I think the second that Walcott scored, we knew it was going to go down to the wire, and I think the penalty was rough, but. You know, a game like that, like Wes was saying, we're against bottom of the league. You know, you're conceding 3 goals away to bottom of the league, 2 of them in open play. It's the same mess. And for me, it's why Conte was spot on, because how can anyone manage that? How can anyone manage that team that when you're leaking goals for fun? I just don't get it.
No, and I think that's the thing. I mean, we'll get onto Conte later, but I think we're kind of under the illusion that the comments he's made, I don't think are necessarily outrageous. I just think maybe the way he's done it is slightly outrageous. But again, with what we've got at the moment, what isn't outrageous? But before we get onto that, obviously, the thing that really ticked me off, Wes, was the fact that Richarlison apparently picked up a knock in the warm-up, but we still see him start. Now, for me, that was quite baffling, because I think he lasted about 5 minutes. So with that, I really thought it was going to be Richarlison's day to bang in a goal, to get his Premier League goal, but it clearly wasn't from the off, was it?
It wasn't, and it's obviously he's had quite a bit to say in true Richarlison style. So you're kind of looking at it the next couple of games. After that, you're looking at him. You know, can he try and get on a run? Obviously, I was at the Forest game, and I mean, that pass from Oliver Skipp, by the way, was just absolutely outrageous. You know, you're talking like Tom Huddleston vibes. It's just put it where you want it. Like, where do you want it? I'll find you. But obviously that was ruled out for offside. And I think everybody was really gutted for him at that point. And it just feels like, again, with Richie, it's another kind of injury setback. He's had quite a few. And I think that's probably why he hasn't been able to get that run of form, because it's just been so stop-start for him. But yeah, to find out that he was injured in the warm-up or carrying a slight knock and then went out, I think is not ideal. And you're looking at it and going, well, why wasn't potentially something changed there? But if I remember being at a game, I think this was the day City won the league with the Aguero moment. So, you know, it was one of those where, like, I was at the Spurs game, we played Fulham. I remember it so well. And we had Adam Smith that played, and he got injured just before half time, and every Spurs fan was going like, right, well, that's him done. He's not coming out the second half. Like, he came out and he could barely walk, and everybody was just going, what on earth is going on here? Like, the geezer could not walk, never mind kick a football, he couldn't walk. So we were all a bit baffled with that one. So yeah, it's something that is usually strange, but it's something that I've seen before, unfortunately. And yeah, someone's got to obviously take the control and, like it says there, the power out of the players' hands. I think we're starting to see it a little bit more now with head injuries, but I think other injuries perhaps need to go in that way as well.
No, and I think it's just frustrating, the fact that, like I said, we've been gutted for Richie that he didn't get that goal against Forest. But again, you don't start a player that's clearly got a knock. But Connor, talking about the first half, it took us a little while to find our feet. Obviously, the goal came through Pedro Porro, who wears number 23, which is the best shirt to wear. But taking that as a positive, because most of the game was pretty dire that first half, it was good to see Pedro Porro hit the back of the net.
It was great. It was great. I think he is a credit in terms of going forward. That's what we knew he was great for, and he's getting himself in those positions all the time. Yeah, and I mean, the finish was, you know, that's for your first goal for the club. That's how you score your first goal. You know what I mean? That was, yeah, it was good from him, and it's frustrating because you like to think with that, you know, it was just before half time, you know, you know, Southampton's heads are going to drop, everything's going to be fine, and for whatever reason, Southampton come out second half and they get the goal straight away. So you just think, what's the point? Where's that whole mentality of get a goal before half time, it changes everything? Because with us, it doesn't do anything. I'm happy for him, but I mean, and Tottenham are happy for him, clearly, with everything they put on social media, but that's the only thing they can put on social media at the minute, because they're not giving us anything else, which is really annoying, but that's this football club, isn't it? So, you know.
I was going to say, it's just the communication. Like you said, they can't really boast anything because the replies are just absolutely, I mean, so be it, that's what it should be, but the replies are just, yeah, they're not a fun place to be on Twitter, but sometimes you don't really blame the fans for given their expressions because we never get any communication from the club and we still haven't. But going back to the game, obviously, like you said, Connor, Shea Adams manages to get that equaliser. But then, Wes, we managed to go and get another goal in front, and that was from Harry Kane. I mean, we talk about Harry Kane all the time, but it was just a great finish from him once again.
Yeah, no, and I think that's we've seen that kind of combination with Kulu and Kane previously as well, and you just know that when who was that? Unbelievable!
God is having a little disco,
Unbelievable!
Man.
Yeah. Didn't expect that. Put it that way. Live, you say? What? No. But yeah, I think when Decky does cut in on that left and he puts in a ball like that, it always looks very, very dangerous. And yeah, I think obviously for Kane to get his head on it, and again, really, really good finish. Bazunu, no chance with that, and yeah, it was just a class goal, I think. And I believe now Harry Kane scored more headed goals in one season. I want to say overtook Big Dunk and Ferguson. So yeah, another record for Harry Kane.
Defo, and he does that all the time. It seems like it's one record after another that he seems to smash. And then, Connor, we managed to extend our lead again. But the interesting thing, like David it says, we see Perisic and he doesn't necessarily celebrate. Do you feel like that was a sign of things to come that we've experienced this week?
I think he doesn't celebrate. I mean, I don't know how much he's on social media, but he gets a lot of stick. A lot of stick. I think he is probably of the players that we sign in the summer. I think when he first came in, he looked all right. A couple of assists, this, that, the other. He gets a lot of stick though. So I don't know if there's anything to do with that. I don't know if it's the general vibe in the club at the minute. I mean, we haven't really had anything to celebrate. It's tough really because you want to like him and you want to like his effort, but I mean, he's probably just frustrated as well. That's what it is. He, again, like with Conte, everywhere he's been, he's won stuff, really, hasn't he? So he comes to Tottenham and it's the same story, isn't it? So yeah, maybe he's just like the fans. Maybe he's actually just like us. He's like, I'm not going to celebrate this because what's the point,
Mm-hmm. That is true. I think that's the thing. I think it kind of puts into perspective, like you say, when you've got a player that's won stuff elsewhere, he comes to this club and maybe scoring a goal that doesn't necessarily mean nothing, but it's like, what is the grand scheme of things? It's just really interesting to see him, because I don't know whether that was his first goal for us. I'm not too sure, but I saw there was murmurs on Twitter. It was just a bit strange that he didn't necessarily celebrate that. But I don't know, it's very, very odd, but not very odd. And then obviously we then concede a goal, Wes. I don't like, well, I'd say I don't like single out players. I tend to do it quite a bit. But I am still baffled to why Eric Dyer has gone on the back line to where Kane is to try and defend the ball from coming in rather than going to defend the player that's unmarked in the box. It still baffles me.
That's an England centre half there, by the way. Just let that one sink in as well. How he's got a call up for England, I've got no idea because he's been horrendous. Yeah, Eric Dyer, he's a questionable defender at the best of times. So yeah, I can't. I've still got nightmares from the Leicester away game. I'm not going to lie. He was absolutely horrendous that day. And like I say, I still have nightmares. I still think about him not closing down Iniacho when it's a ball over the top. But yeah, it's not the first time we've seen Dyer do something like that and defend really badly. Yeah, I can see why Poch in particular wanted to perhaps try and phase him out or move him into midfield and just have him absolutely nowhere near our back line because he's just not it, I'm afraid. He's just not it. I think we're all waiting for a half decent centre half to come out with Eric Dyer, and yeah, it's not going to happen. He's 28, 29 now. He should be entering his prime years as centre half, and if anything, he's got worse as the years have gone on, which is not a good sign. Not a good sign.
And the worst part is, as he's slowly got worse, he's actually got more minutes.
Yeah,
I don't understand the correlation.
He's become a first team centre half as he's actually, died. Yeah, he's just got worse. It just doesn't make sense at all.
No, it really doesn't. And I think that's the thing that that really baffles me when people say like these managers come in, we get new managers, but they're like, oh yeah, but we signed this player, we signed that player. But I'm still thinking, how is Dyer still there and we haven't phased him out? And like Alan says, and like you said, Wes, how has Dyer got into the England squad? I don't know. I think he's paying someone off. He's got some dirt on someone. But then, Connor, it goes from bad to worse because you're thinking, oh, it's all right. We'll win 3-2 against these lot. But then VAR comes back in its head. Now, obviously, I was at the game and someone I know was in the players' lounge and he was speaking to Leighton Niles' wife. And he was going on about how they were talking about the game. And then Leighton Niles comes out and he says, yeah, I definitely over-exaggerated that penalty. It wasn't something I wanted to hear. But when you hear something like that, it just completely takes away VAR because VAR is supposed to identify that and take that away. Like, what is going on?
So again, for me, I have no issue with VAR whatsoever. VAR is not the issue. It's the constant officials who are doing it. So it's a lottery, really, isn't it? So the referee we've had for that game has given that as a penalty. You'll have another ref maybe ref in that game, and he won't give it because it's all perspective. VAR's perfect for seeing that incident, but you're going to have one ref saying it is and another ref saying it's not, and that's where the consistency fails. So. Again, perfect example. Let's look back at Eric Dyer handball versus Newcastle years ago. Do you remember? I think we were 1-up at home, and it was like a last-minute penalty, and it literally hit his arm. It couldn't do anything. But that's it. It's all based on the officials, and it's our luck, and it's even more our luck that it's Maitland-Niles, an ex-Arsenal player, just to make it worse. Do you know what I mean? So it's just us, but at the same time, at that point, we need to wrap the game up. We shouldn't even be worrying about them getting if they get a penalty, sure. But why are we not wrap the game up? Why are we constantly putting ourselves in this position where we're nervous? And I know it's the Spurs way, but come on, you're 3-1 away at Southampton, who are bottom of the league, who I think hadn't even scored more than one goal in a game for God knows how long. Do you know what I mean? So it's our own fault. I don't even care about the decision, to be honest. I care that stupid defence conceded 3 goals, honestly.
That is true when you make that point, because I think, like you said, looking back at the goals Southampton scored, I don't think they've ever scored anywhere near 3, let alone scoring 3 in the same game. Like, it makes no sense. I mean, we've spoken about VAR and the fact that it's inconsistent. But like Connor says, there's no way we should be allowing that much pressure onto us when we're that high in terms of goals and the scoreline. Like, it shouldn't have happened. No way.
No, absolutely not. And you know, like we've said, we should have really wrapped it up. I think Southampton when they are in that kind of moment where they are losing, they tend to obviously get beat, apart from us, or they get beat quite heavily. So I think from us, it was really poor game management, like seriously poor game management. And yeah, players needed to do a lot better with that. There was, I think Conte's called them out enough anyway. But it just seemed like the game management, there was just no leaders there. And yeah, it was just poor. Individual errors yet again costing us, and no coach, no manager at any level, I don't care who you are, can legislate for individual errors. And it's unfortunate for us that we are getting an absolute catalogue this season. Like, I'm so glad there's not like blooper DVDs anymore, because we'd have about an hour's worth, I think, just on individual defensive errors. Honestly, Conte must have been pulling his hair out, and I can see why he was as frustrated as he was after the game on Saturday.
And I think that's the thing. I think it's easier to point a finger at every single party and be like, well, it's all the players' fault, it's all Conte's fault, it's all the board's fault. But Connor, I think there's a big, massive combination at the moment. Like we've kind of said, there's defensive errors, there's Conte's tactics and subs, there's the board not doing this, not doing that. I mean, for you, after the comments Conte said, how did you kind of feel? What was your kind of stance on it?
Oh, I am so passionate about this, honestly.
Far away.
My man Conte, you know what? I loved him anyway, to be fair. And I know everyone's wanted him out, and I can understand that. But my, oh my, mate, he could not have put everything better. What a man. What a man for calling the board out for 20 years of one trophy, for calling out this team and their stupid mentality, you know, and people will always point stuff back to Conte and they will always look at it and they say, oh, you know, well, we got knocked out of the Carabao this season to Nottingham Forest. We got knocked out of the FA Cup to Sheffield United. But you had the same issue with Pochettino, who lost in cups. You had the same issue with Mourinho, lost in cups. It's the same mentality of the squad. And like Wes said, that defence, you're going to go and get a Klopp or a Pep. They're not going to do anything better with that defence, are they? So he is absolutely spot on, and I love him for that. And he's gone and got himself sacked for it, probably. But what a man, because someone had to say it. And if he gets himself sacked from it, then fair play to him. For me, he deserves the payout. If I had the money, I would pay him for that, because that is priceless, what he said there. And it needed to be said. And everyone can keep getting really excited about Pochettino and whatnot, but that's not going to fix the problems, is it?
No, and I think that's the thing. I think because everybody's so fed up with the boring football. And yes, we have been knocked out of competitions. Yes, that has annoyed a lot of people. It's annoyed me, and it's probably annoyed you guys as well. But when you sit there and that man has literally said what every Spurs fan has been thinking, but the first thing people turn to is, oh, we can't say that about our players. We can't say that about our club. But it's truth, isn't it, Wes? There's an ounce, not an ounce, it's probably more truth than what you said. I mean, what's your kind of thoughts, Wes? I don't want to put words into your mouth. What are you kind of feeling?
Yeah, he was a bit vexed, wasn't he? Surprised he didn't call out the kitchen staff whilst he was there. Do you know what I mean? Wow. Yeah, he was not a happy bunny. Just the thing with this, right? And I've been stewing on this for a few days. Every single Spurs fan cannot argue with what Antonio Conte has come out and said. In fact, every Spurs fan is probably clapping him and going, "Do you know what? You're bang on." I think the way he's probably gone about it, yeah, could have been a bit better. I think, you know, we look at someone like a Mourinho as an example in a similar way as that he will call people out, but I think the way he does it is in such a clever way whereby he's made his point, but also there's a positive to come out of it. For this particular situation and this particular situation only, there feels like there's no positive outcome to come out of it. I mean, half the fan base want him out, so they're probably buzzing that he's come out and said this, and it looks like he's getting the sack, obviously. But it feels like there's no real positive outcome off the back of it. And I think the thing that we've had with Conte and Mourinho is the style of play. It's not what we're used to as Spurs fans. But I think, you know, with their track record, I think every single Spurs fan would have forgiven them had they got us over the line. Obviously, Mourinho did get us to a final, but then he was chopped before it. I think had Conte got us into a semi-final or a final, we'd kind of go, okay, we can see why, you know, the playing style is the way it is, because it gets us so far. But when we're going out of competitions in the same way that we were when we were playing attacking football, it's a bit like, well, what's the point? What's the point in watching defensive football, counter-attacking football, when we haven't really got the players to do it? And actually, the club has gone backwards. And yet it just feels like, you know, like I say, the trade-off with these kind of managers is they have to win. And when they don't win, it becomes then about the playing style and everything else. You know, Conte's comments, like I say, as a fan, you can't argue with it, because every single person knows that the board aren't competent in terms of backing their managers. And that is just not with players in, but players going out the door as well. We know that the players aren't good enough, and they haven't been good enough for a long, long time. And that mentality is not of an elite level where we strive to be as a club. It's not of that super elite where we perceive ourselves to be. And actually, I like the fact that he said about the fans, and he kind of feels sorry for us. You know, we travel in our numbers up and down the country, follow Spurs in Europe, and yeah, we pay good money to watch the team, and we want something more. But yeah, should he have probably kept the criticism of the players a bit more in house, potentially, and just come out and said, look, it was unacceptable and it wasn't good enough. And I think every single Spurs fan would have gone, all right, yeah, we know it wasn't good enough, we know it was unacceptable, but then you go off on the players, I think would have probably been the better way perhaps to go about it. Because I think if I look back at Mourinho's interview, which I did see recently against Zagreb, you could see Jose was hurting as well, but he didn't straight away go and attack the players. It was more, it still felt like it was the whole club and it was us as opposed to me versus them. And that's kind of the vibe that I got from Conte, whereas it's me over here and everybody else is sort of over there.
Yeah, I mean, I've only watched briefly parts of the Conte interview, just purely because you can see little clips on Twitter everywhere. I kind of get what you're saying, Wes. I think, as like we've all said, we all resonate with the fact what you said about the board. I don't think anybody can argue against that or complain him about saying that. The players, I don't know. I think if you're not good enough, you should be told, and whether that's publicly or not, I think that's just my belief. If you're not good enough, tough. But I think, like you said, I can kind of see what you're saying in terms of this is Tottenham and I've got nothing to do with it. But Connor, I think, like we've kind of touched on, I think Conte isn't a saint in all of this. I'm not going to say he's the only party, because like I said, there's loads of different combinations to why this isn't working. But I think for me, it's just the tactical inability to change things up. And yes, it's probably because we don't have the players to do it, but he's just so stubborn. And I think that is his big downfall.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a massive part in it, of course. And I think Wes was spot on when he said it's almost because of the style of football isn't pretty. More of the blame does shift to him. But I think we need to look at it beyond that. And I'm Conte is to blame in this, of course. He is not blameless at all, and he needs to take responsibility for that. But you look at it, in general, it's a Mourinho, it's a Conte. These managers come here, we spend the money on them, and that's absolutely fine. And you have to wonder why they do come to Tottenham. Do they sort of think that they can break this mold of spending money and us actually breaching that thing? Because it's not possible to win with these players. We have seen it with managers. We've seen it with Mourinho. Mourinho's left us and won a trophy. Conte will leave us and win a trophy. So you have to look at it and you have to say, what's the point of employing a manager like that, thinking they are going to fix the issue if you're not going to give them what they want? Because let's face it, a Conte system works with those powerful centre-backs. So why on earth are we then going, transfer window after transfer window without signing centre-backs? Why are we still playing with the same mess? Because it's reflective of how stuck in the past that we are. And everyone's talking about this new rebuild, but where does the rebuild start? It has to start from the beginning. If Lloris was back in the team and making mistakes, who'd be blaming him? There's constant players all over that we can blame, but in general, it is just a massive mess. And I don't think that anyone could come in and fix this with this current squad. And people can blame Conte. They could say yes. And I do agree. He doesn't change the game at all. The Danjuma signing is completely pointless. It's ridiculously pointless. But is that his signing? Is that him saying, I did not want this player, so I'm not going to play him? Same thing with Spence. He never played Spence. Everyone was saying Spence is this great player. Conte wins things. If he doesn't play Spence, surely there's a reason. On top of that, Basuma, before he got injured, he doesn't play him. Forster plays because Lloris is out. It's all this thing of, if you're going to sign this manager, if he's at Chelsea and he's looking at all those players, how many of those players does he sign? All right, we spent 60 million on Richarlison. So, yeah, that's maybe a signing that he would make. But the rest of those signings, I can categorically tell you, he would probably not go and sign. Perisic was a Conte signer because he'd managed him, and that's fine. Perisic would probably work better in a system with centre-backs that are competent and can actually do their job. So it's one of those things where, yes, he's to blame partially for this, and I'm 100% going to sit here and say that. But he is so spot on, and yeah, he needs to go. He needs to go, but he's gone out in the right way, and he's gone out in the way that makes me love him and actually look back really fondly at his period, even though all we realistically did was a top four. And I think, again, you put anyone in right now, no one is beating that. People seem to think because we spent all this money in the summer, we'd be better. We could be second or third and maybe have a cup run. That's not how it works. So he is to blame, of course, but it's the problems are so much bigger. They've been there since arguably mid-Poch. Poch wanted a revamp and never got it, So
it is literally like history's repeating itself again. And I think that's the thing, like I said, I think because everybody's so fed up of watching boring football. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't care if it was boring football. We won 1-0 every week and we were happy. But sadly, that isn't the case now. And like you said, I think his tenure is coming to an end because of the way it's going. But like you say, you can't you can't bring in, say, another manager and still expect things to change, because Wes, like Conte said, there's you can't do anything if you're not given the tools to do so. And I know I don't want to do a massive Poch, let's not get him in sort of thing, because I do want Poch at some point. I just think now is way too soon for that to happen. Nothing has changed realistically.
No, but if I look at Conte's time at Tottenham, it's one of those where, excuse me, where it feels like we're always one game away from a disaster, one game away from him getting the sack, and it always feels like he's doing us a favour by being here. Well, no, that's not how it works. Like, you know, you go from, when I look at it last season, right? We beat City away, unbelievable game, unbelievable scenes in the away end, limbs everywhere. I know I was there. And he's then saying that the players are like some of the best players that he's worked with, and he's lauded the whole squad. 3 days later, we go Spursy and lose to Burnley. And then he's coming out and saying, I don't know if I'm the right man for this job. Well, hold on a minute. 4 days ago, the grass was green, the birds were singing, everything else. Do you know what I mean? It's so Jekyll and Hyde with Conte. And like I say, it's like when we win, everything is brilliant. And I mean, obviously, as a fan, you're going into work, you know, after the weekend, and yeah, you are buzzing because your team has won. But then at the same time, there's never really been that perspective and that sort of long-term vision and picture with Conte. It was almost like, right, bang. You know, I am gutted for him, because I would have loved it to have worked. But yeah, it just feels like I say, it's always felt like one game from a disaster, one game from him getting the sack. And it feels like he was doing us a favour in terms of him being here and taking the job, because it felt like we had nowhere else to go. So it was almost like, right, you've begged me to be here. I'm going to almost do what I like. I'm going to throw my toys out the pram at times where really we don't necessarily need it. And all we need is just a bit of a calm head, just to bring a bit of perspective to the situation. But yeah, sorry, Hollie, I've completely forgotten your question.
That's okay. That's all right. I've just seen Darren's comment. It's killed me off, so it's fine. My mum would choose Emmerdale, to be fair. But, no, I think you're right. It's just a complete mess at the moment. And I don't know who it was. I think here, we're talking about, and I think this is the big problem as well, because we've touched on Conte, we've touched on the manager, we've touched on these players, the ones that we know that are still here, Dyer. But in terms of the board, I think this is the big thing, Connor, that I think everybody's talking about, because it seems so sus to me that every time we're so close to getting into that next step to a cup final, it completely goes. And I just don't know how that happens. Do you think this is a genuine thing from our board, that they would rather choose top four, get in that Champions League, get more money, than win an FA Cup?
Yes. yes. A million times yes. The perfect examples of this are, do you remember when we were in the Champions League under Poch, and we had, it might have been the game against Monaco or something like that. We had a couple of periods in the Champions League where we were pretty bad. It might have been around the time we were at Wembley. And there was all these things coming out about, why are we playing a weaker team in the Champions League than we are in the league? We're in the Champions League. We're literally playing in the league to get the Champions League. Why are we prioritising the league over the Champions League? So that, for me, was the biggest indicator for a start that, yes, all we are simply doing is trying to keep getting in that Champions League, keep doing that, because we have not built on it whatsoever. Beyond that, you've got silly, Pochettino in, I think it was the FA Cup semi-final, is it? The one against Chelsea. You remember when Son was at, like, wing-back?
Left wing-back, yeah.
When the hell has that ever been a thing? Why is that a thing? It baffles me so much. That is, I loved Conte, but I was like, who does that? What? And he gave away a penalty. So do you know what I mean? It's just infuriating, because it's so clearly evident that is literally what it is. And maybe Wes is right to a certain extent. Sometimes Conte comes across that it's, yeah, I'm doing you a favour that I'm here. You know, I'm getting 15 million a year, but yeah, I'm doing you a favour that I'm here. And it's it has done that. But from what he's saying in terms of getting top four every year, that's what it is. That has always been the priority, unfortunately, for them. Because why have we not done anything in cups? Why are we sacking Mourinho days before a final? What? Because he might get a couple of million bonus potentially if we win it. Pay the bonus. I just don't care. I honestly think that Carabao Cup would have meant the absolute world to us. And people can say whatever they want. It's a Carabao Cup. It's a Mickey Mouse Cup, whatever. Well, I remember the Carling Cup meant that absolute world in 2008. Do you know what I mean? So it just really grinds my gears because it's so evident, because it's constantly crashing out of cups with all these different managers. And I've said it's a mentality thing in the past, and it is a mentality thing, but maybe it's a mentality thing that stems from the top, because these coaches, these managers are told, you know, you have to prioritize top four. So then you play weaker teams in the cup and you're back on the same cycle again of this manager's not good enough because we've not won anything. He's won stuff everywhere else. So why is it when he comes to Tottenham, he doesn't? Do you know what I mean? It's the Tottenham logic that I don't even think the biggest geniuses could understand. It's just honestly so baffling.
That's the thing, though. The longer this goes on, the more evident it is. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. It's like, come on, we're not completely blind to the fact that this is the thing. I mean, like Dan says here, and I'll come to you for this, Wes. Does that mean that Levy will sack Conte because of the threat of not making top four at the moment? Is that the big thing? I mean, that's all we've got left in all honesty, isn't it? That's all we've got to play for now. And that's because Conte played a weaker side in the FA Cup. He played a weaker side in the League Cup. Like, that just kind of emulates what this board want.
Yeah, do I think it's a threat of not making the top four is the reason that Conte is going to get the sack? Absolutely not. Is it a factor? Potentially. I mean, Conte said at the minute we're going to finish 7th or 8th. So, you know, as for the weaker teams in the cup, this is a conversation and a debate that is probably the biggest one of interest to me, because when both of those team sheets landed against Forest and against Sheffield United in the cups, I guarantee majority of fans will go in, cool, it looks pretty strong, that should get the job done. And then it's just the reactionary measures afterwards that get to me, because it's like, oh, should have played Harry Kane, why isn't Romero starting, because then you go, well, there's enough on the pitch to get the job done in the first place.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have need to bring Harry Kane on against Sheffield United. I know they're flying in the Championship, having an unbelievable season, but there was enough on that pitch to get the job done without him. And there was enough
team as well. Sorry to interrupt.
They did as well.
Yeah.
So I think from those perspectives, I personally think it's our fringe players knocking on the door to the manager saying, Gaffer, give me a chance. I want to play. And then they go, right, okay. They give them the chance. They don't take it. And it's been the same way for a very, very long time. And I think it is those fringe players that feel this sense of entitlement that they need to play, but yet they don't do anything to justify their selection. But yeah, I think, you know, we know that Pochettino wanted certain players, never got them. We know Harry Redknapp wanted certain players, never got them. AVB wanted certain players, never got them. I think, just to get a bit of perspective, I think at the time when obviously Harry and AVB were there, could we have really splashed out that extra for those players? There's an argument for and against. I mean, you know, obviously Harry wanted Eden Hazard and we were haggling over a couple of million there. If it's that kind of thing, you go, well, yeah, you know, sort your life out there. But, you know, obviously we were nowhere near in terms of generating the revenue that we are now as a football club. But I think since we moved into that new stadium, there shouldn't be any reason why we cannot compete with the very best in Europe for the very best across the world. So, yeah, I mean, Poch obviously wanting, Ruben Diaz, Bruno and Dybala, and he didn't even get his centre half. He ended up with, you know, Ndombele and Lo Celso, and I don't even think he ended up with a centre forward. He had Vincent Janssen at one point. He had Llorente, best hip in football, granted, but you know, it's just that feeling of we could have and we haven't. And I think as well at that time, had we brought in Ruben Diaz, Bruno Fernandes, and Paulo Dybala, we win the league. I really do. At that time as well, I think we'd have won the league. And it's just so frustrating from that perspective. But look, you know, every manager and people in football know how Daniel Levy operates. They know drives a hard bargain in terms of getting players out the door and bringing them in. Of course, he wants to get the best deal. You know, he's a finance person at the end of the day, he's a pound, shilling and pence man. He's going to look at the numbers and try and go that way. But the strangest thing is, I think I read the other day that the 3 managers we've had in recent times have had nearly 400 million. And you think, well, where's that 400 million gone? And actually, what could have happened if we gave Pochettino those level of resources and that 400 million? Where would we have been as a football club? And I think him coming back poses a lot more questions than answers. I think my head and my heart are really, really torn as to who I want next, because it's obviously inevitable that Antonio's going. So yeah, like I say, my head is really, really torn. But yeah, I hope that answers the question anyway.
No, it does. And I think you're right. I think everybody wants Poch back. My only thing is it's too soon, I think. And I think it will tarnish what he had at Tottenham. I just think it's too soon. And I think everybody has short-term memories because those last 6 months were horrendous under Pochettino. They were not enjoyable. And yes, I know, because I know you're going to come in some ways, but I think, yes, he didn't get backed. Yes, it was a slow burner that he was going, but I do not think it's the right time to bring in someone like Poch because it'll just be a fairy tale that'll just end sour again, I think personally.
So my question to you, Hollie, is would you have sacrificed one bad season under Poch, which was happening when he got the sack, for 5 or 6 good ones that he's already had? And my example is Liverpool, because they've had 6-7 years of greatness under Klopp, won everything. And yes, he's built that football club back up to being one of the real elite within football, but they're having a real struggle this year and they need a rebuild. But I think the difference between a club like Liverpool, who for a long period of time we were neck and neck with, is that they've gone, no, we understand that we're going to take a hit for a year and then come back a little bit stronger. Obviously, down the road had a hit for a good period of time where they were 4 or 5 years and have come back stronger. Whereas we pressed panic and tried to see if the grass was greener, and we're now realising potentially that it clearly wasn't.
I get that. I do get that. And I know everybody says, but Poch, when this is where Jason's been indoctrinating me. But anyway, I get that. We've had I've lost my train of thought now. But with Poch, yes, there was some good times. And that time when Leicester won the league was probably the time that we could have won the league. Because everybody forgets we had Prime Ericsson. We had these players that I sit there and think, wow, we really could have gone something. We didn't. And I don't know. I'm not saying that's purely down to Poch, but look where Poch went after that. Yes, guaranteed he won something where he left after that. But I just don't think it's right. I mean, Connor, because Poch is the in thing at the moment and everybody wants. I think we're all just going off of nostalgia. It's got Bale vibes all over again. Don't get me wrong. I was all for Bale to come back, but you know what I mean?
Do you know what, mate? I really do know what you mean. And honestly, I could have cried when Pochettino left, man. I remember feeling so down in the dumps. I remember going to Munich when Mourinho was in charge. He took charge of that group game. And I remember just thinking, I'd had a couple of drinks. So eventually I was chanting for Mourinho. I didn't want to chant for Mourinho. I was so angry we let Pochettino go. We got things so wrong. And we did get it wrong. And Wes makes some great points. I think the issue that we had was that 18 months without spending at the end of the day, wasn't it? On top of that, the season we made the Champions League final, Dembele goes in that January. If we had Dembele for 45 minutes in the Champions League final, because that's all we could play, who knows? Do you know what I mean? Honestly, do you see what I mean? It's infuriating. And I think you are very right. That team Pochettino had was fantastic. Do I think Conte could have done better with that team? I don't. But I think purely and solely because Conte's system's very different. It wouldn't have worked with that team. So I think Pochettino was fantastic and I love him and I really, really love him and I want him back one day, but do not want him back now because it makes no sense. You are 100% spot on. If we get him back, he will tarnish his reputation with us. Fans will turn on him. Fans will, some of the same fans calling to have him back are the same fans that wanted him gone. Do you know what I mean? So we are all living in the past. That is exactly where we are. And listen, we get him back, I'll probably cry with happiness, but I'll also cry with sadness and think, what are you doing, you beautiful Argentinian? Do you know what I mean? So it's a tough one. And I think if he comes back, it's going to take years. And unfortunately, Daniel Levy and co have never really given patience, have they? They tend to press the button. You know, Poch nearly supposedly got the chop in that Villa game, didn't he? With the Kane free kick, the deflected goal. You know, so he was on the edge as well. So we need a Poch type manager, but if we get Poch back now, because for me, this squad is a lot worse than the one he had. And unless you have a complete rebuild, I'm talking 200, 300 million, which you arguably could have given to Conte when Conte first came in, then it'd be different. But it's not the right appointment at the minute, no, because we are not going to spend that money and we're just living in the past, to be honest. Have him back one day when the team's better. You know, you've got an aging Son, you've got Kane potentially on his way. It just does not make any sense at all, personally. And yeah, it's just pure nostalgia. Pure nostalgia. And it really hurts. Really, really, really hurts because I want him back, but I don't want him back now because he will ruin it for himself because we are a mess.
I think that's the thing. I think it's not the want of not wanting him, although Jay may have indoctrinated me. It's more the fact I just don't want him to tarnish it. I think that's the thing for me. And I know people are saying, oh, but it'll be good football. We can start playing the Tottenham way. But so could another manager that came in, another young manager. I mean, we'll get into that because obviously rumours have come out. I can't say my source, but it is saying that he will get the chop Thursday, which I think is pretty much inevitable. And then everybody's words on their lips is, oh, who comes in? Wes, I think it's going to be Mason. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's going to be Mason. I have a massive hunch. So on that, how are you kind of feeling if that's how we go forward?
Yeah, interim till the end of the season for Ryan Mason. Okay, sound. That's pretty much it. I'm hearing people on Twitter say that, well, why don't you give it to Poch now? He gets 10 games as a free hit. Nah, it's very rare you get free hits in football, I'm afraid. Listen, my heart is begging for the gaffer to come home. It really is. But my head is telling me, for his own sanity, a little bit like Connor, please do not do it. Because if he gets let down again, his reputation is finished. From a Tottenham perspective, and I think every single Spurs fan would go, let's just enjoy the ride that we had with Pochettino. Let's remember City away Champions League, Ajax away Champions League, that Champions League final. Let's remember, going unbeaten in the last season at White Hart Lane and what he gave us. Listen, he's given every single Spurs fan the best evening of their life. Let's not forget that. And yeah, from that perspective, that is the only reason I don't want him back. I'd want him back from a selfish point of view. I want him back 100%. I think he's the only person that can go in and straight away have his imprint on the football club from top to bottom. And I think he's the only manager in recent years that's been able to build a football club, whereas the other managers have wanted to build a team. And I think that's been the biggest difference. The person who I personally would want to come in the football club is Brendan Rodgers. Now, everybody that I've said that to is really, really confused. But Brendan plays good football. You can't argue with that. Plays good football. Has brought through young players wherever he's been. You look at this Leicester team now, you look the likes of Luke Thomas. I know he's given Harvey Barnes a real run in the Premier League. I know he was sort of on the fringes going out on loan and things like that, but he's given him a run and turned him into a Premier League player. You look at, obviously, in terms of his recruitment, getting Fofana for next to nothing, selling him for 80 odd million, and things like that. And actually, I think he's got a little bit of credit in the bank where he's actually won something fairly recently as well. The FA Cup with Leicester. Let's not forget that. But yeah, I think Brendan is a really, really underrated manager. I think he just gets a lot of stick for how it ended at Liverpool. But yeah, for me, I think he's wicked, and I think he would be able to buy into our football club, and I think he would be somebody that fits the culture and the DNA of the football club really, really well. And I don't think there's many managers out there that would do it, because the last few have been completely the opposite. We've gone for those short-term fixes that haven't worked. So I think we need to press the reset and go for somebody who fits that DNA of the club, and buys into the values of the club. And I think Brendan would be able to do that, and I think he'd do it pretty quickly.
I mean, I know lots of people in the chat are saying
I'm getting hammered by them. I'm getting absolutely hammered, mate.
But I rated that you back your thoughts. I don't really know. who I'm thinking, because at the moment I haven't got a clue, because I just think to myself it'll be the same old, same old. But going back to obviously Ryan Mason being interim and then seeing who comes in next, Connor, for you, what are your kind of first thoughts on the Mason interim once again? And then who would you like to bring in?
Oh, what are my thoughts on the Mason interim? I'm getting a throwback to Mourinho, man. I'm getting a throwback to let's give him the job end of the season and let him manage a Carabao Cup final with no experience at all. That's what I'm getting, honestly. I love Mason, I really do. He is Spurs through and through. What a lad, you know. He's fantastic, he is, and it's even more fantastic that he's been working with Conte, and I think that's a credit to him, really. But to be honest with you, if Mason got it to the end of the season, cool. At this point, I actually don't care for the rest of the season. I am so deflated with this football club at this point because there is nothing to play. Like I've said it weeks and weeks and weeks ago. We do not get top four this season. So for me, you appoint Mason, you're probably certifying that. You're giving him more experience, which is great, but you're probably certifying that, and you're probably just looking, okay, let's go again in the summer. But with all due respect, the last time we did that, we went and got Nuno in the summer. So I do not trust. I don't trust where this is going. Do you know what? It's one of those things where I convinced myself so many times this season we had a trophy coming. I was like, it's coming, it's gonna happen, right? And I was just going away to Forest when we lost that game. I was like, honestly, this club is cursed. So yeah, so sorry, I'm babbling a bit, but for me, Mason, fair play to him. I'm happy for him if he gets it for the rest of the season. We're not going to get top four. That's fine. Good for him, I guess. In terms of who we have after Mason, it just needs to be a project manager, which we all want, and it does not need to be Pochettino because it will not work. Some great points in the chat. There were a lot of players still here that were there when Pochettino got the sack. So how is that going to work again? And also on top of that as well, this isn't another Bale scenario. We can't just go and flunk money and go and sign 7-8 players and it will fix it. It won't. That didn't fix it. That didn't. We had some tough times after that. Do you know what I mean? So it's just a mess. I'm just so deflated. I honestly am literally like, as long as we get a project manager in and I would say as long as we back him, but I don't think anyone's going to get back, to be honest. So, yeah. I don't know. Fair play to Mason, though. Big up.
It is rough, and I think this is the first. I mean, it's mad. This is the first season, and I know lots of people. Obviously, I'm not quite young, but I'm obviously quite a young fan in terms of I haven't seen life other than Enix, so I don't really have anything else to compare things to. And I know people say, "Oh, yeah, it was rough before they came in, this, that, and the other," but I just can't fathom the fact that we've got this swanky stadium. Yes, okay, it probably costs a lot of money to get it built, this, that, and the other. I'm not going to say I'm any good at accounting, but it just confuses the hell out of me that we can't go and build on something. It always has to be top four. It can't be just let's just go and get a cheeky FA Cup, this, that, and the other. Because I think as fans, although lots of other people say we're not entitled to win a trophy, I think as fans, with how long we've put up with not having a trophy and seeing the likes of Harry Kane in our squad, seeing the likes of Son in our squad, we have nothing to show for it. And I think that's the most infuriating thing. I mean, I know it's getting up to axing time, but Wes, I'll come to you first on this last point. And that is Harry Kane, because we all know he's done the records he needs to do at Spurs in terms of beating Jimmy Greaves' all-time goal scoring record. We know that he wants to beat, obviously, the Premier League all-time goal scoring record. So that means he won't go abroad. Now, for me, if another project comes in, do you, Wes, honestly see him playing out his final years at Tottenham? Or if the likes of, say, Man United come in for him, would that turn his head now, considering where we are as a club?
I see Harry Kane staying at Tottenham. I said this when there was rumours of him going to Manchester City. It made no sense for him to go to City, given the fact that City could have waited a year and got Haaland for half the price, which is what they've ended up doing, getting Haaland for half the price they would have paid for Harry Kane. The United one's interesting. I think they'll probably go for someone like Osimhen from Napoli. I just think he would fit the way they play. I wouldn't say better than Harry Kane, because Harry Kane could play for anyone in the world. But I think if you bring in a Harry Kane, all of a sudden at United, what happens to Bruno in the sense of the positioning that he takes up. What happens to Ericsson? I know he's been playing a lot deeper, but again, what happens there to those sort of creative off the line type of players? Because Kane will drop, he will drop in and he will link the play. I honestly see Harry Kane staying at Tottenham. I really do. I don't think it's necessarily the football that will keep Kane at Tottenham. I think it might be a family decision. Because he has got a young family, and I think taking that into consideration, I think his wife will like living in London. Obviously, he's got 3 young kids. Will he want to uproot them, change them schooling, everything like that? And that is actually a massive part of what goes on in a transfer. Everybody thinks like, oh, does he? If he wants to go, he can go. Well, actually, sometimes, any player can almost feel like they've got a move set up, and then all of a sudden, the missus at the last minute goes, actually, no, I don't fancy it. So then the deal doesn't happen. And I honestly see Kane, I know you pulled up that question there just now, but I do see Kane finishing his career at Tottenham. What he'll have to show for it is another matter. He'll have his name in the history books, but whether he will be able to show the grandkids anything in terms of medals, who knows? But I seriously do see Harry Kane finishing his career at Tottenham. Just for the fact that I don't see United paying 100 million for a 29-year-old centre forward, and when there's a centre forward out there that is a lot younger, the business value of it and the business sense will mean that they're more likely to get a return on their investment on Osimhen than they would on Harry Kane. So yeah, I see him staying at Spurs 100%, and I've never been worried that he's going to leave us. To be fair, I know Sky sell him every week, but I'm happy.
I get what you're saying. I think when you put the family situation and the fact that he is very much, I don't want to say a home bird, but it kind of is in the fact that he's been here so long. For me, it's the total opposite. This is the first year and I'm like, actually, yeah, maybe something could happen. Just because I feel like when you said that comment was about he's got nothing to show the grandchildren, Connor, for me, that's a bit like Kane might be wired different, but surely every footballer wants to have a trophy on the mantelpiece to show this is what I've done for my career. Or do you think, like Wes has said, Kane's just built different?
I think Wes makes some great points, and I think the family thing is a great thing to look at. But I don't think Kane's built different. I think we've seen him in multiple interviews, haven't we, where he said, "Of course, I want to win trophies. Of course, I want to thing." And I dream of him staying at Tottenham Hotspur, but I also wish that he just goes on and finds something else. The guy needs to. For me, the guy needs to leave us, and it's going to break my heart, but he needs to, because it's just. It hurts to see someone who is so fantastic and brilliant and just the best human being outside football and just a great guy and just everything amazing. It's just a waste. So for me, again, Wes makes some great points, but I look at it now and when does he sign a new contract? Like realistically, right now, in which, because the contract runs out not this summer, next summer. In what period does things start looking good at the club and Kane goes, I'm going to sign a new deal? Unless it's the summer where Levy, Enoch, whoever, give a nice clean plan, and we've got this coach coming in, going to give him that much, going to work out this way. Because for me, if you're looking at this current mess in the club right now, you might love Tottenham Hotspur. Your family might want you to stay. But in what period are you going to go, yeah, I'll sign a new deal because if he signs a new deal, he stays. He stays for the rest of his career at Tottenham. That's it. Unless he goes to America, LA Galaxy, whatever players tend to do at the end of their career. But do you know what I mean? It's very much like I just don't see the point of. Well, I just don't see any point where he's gonna. I don't see any point where he's going to sign a new deal. Honestly, I can't see any light at the end of the tunnel at the minute at all, where he genuinely looks at it and goes, "Yeah, all right, things are looking good here. I'm going to sign a new deal." The only time that he would do that is just when he just thinks, "No, I love this club too much. I love the fans too much." Because he's got Greasy's record. He can leave with that. That is as iconic as it gets for us. He's got Greasy's record. All he wants is the Prem record. So, Osimhen could go United. Kane's best option was going City when it was possible. So. I don't know. I think he possibly stays, but I just don't know when he signs a new deal. It makes no sense for me. It makes no sense to me how he signs a new deal.
And I think that's the thing. Like everything at the moment, there's no clear path. Like we can make these assumptions on player because for me, if I was still playing football. I want to win trophies. That's my main goal. But at the moment, currently, and like we've seen for so many years, I don't know where that trophy's coming from. But again,
I think with Kane, he is the top man at Tottenham. He is the man. He's pretty much can do whatever he likes at Tottenham, right? Does he get that same treatment if he goes anywhere else? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's no way he strolls into that United dressing room and, you know, he's got an aura about him as a person, but I don't think he then gets the. Don't get me wrong. I think the players will go, bloody hell, we've signed Harry Kane. We're onto something. We're going to win the league here. But I don't think he gets that same thing around the training ground and everything else where he could pretty much do, like, if Harry Kane wants to stay out and do extras for 2-3 hours, Harry Kane stays and does extras for 2 or 3 hours. At United or anywhere else, they're kicking him off after, say, half hour, 45 minutes. So I think Kane, I wouldn't say he's got a free pass at Tottenham, but he's got the reign to do near enough what he likes, and I don't think he gets that anywhere else, personally.
No, that's fair. I mean, I love it when I have a show like this where it seems like we're all not on different pages, but it's quite nice to dissect things like this, because normally when I have guests on, it's like I say a point, we kind of agree, someone disagrees, then we kind of agree again. But it's actually quite nice where tonight it's all kind of been a bit all over the gaff, which has actually been quite nice, which is kind of a clear representation of our club at the moment. But it's been really nice to dissect things and to get some stuff off our chests. I mean, it's a day late, so we've had a little bit of time to dissect stuff. But no, it's been really good. Before we head off, I want to say a big thank you to everybody in the chat. You've been very lively tonight. As we know, we do play Everton on Monday. So Hollie Hotspurs Live will be on a Tuesday once again. I might treat you depending on how I'm feeling. It probably won't happen. We might have a match watch along. We'll have to see, because I might have to pull my hair out if it's Mason Ball. But anyways, before we go, I want to say a big thank you to my guests. First of all, Wes, I am so ready for your outro. Where can everybody find you, my friends?
On Twitter at Wezo10. Hollie's waiting for this one. And the reason I was crying earlier, Connor, was because my GOAT is Moussa Dembele. And I could watch him grace a football pitch many a time, and I'm wishing that he came back to our football club. So if there's anything on Moussa Dembele, be sure to know I will retweet it. I say I'm the unofficial Moussa Dembele fan account
there it is.
on Twitter. I run my own football coaching business as well in Milton Keynes called Kickoff Football Academy. So at Co4MK on Instagram and Kickoff Football Academy on Facebook. For that, I've also started getting my own podcast back, Hollie.
Oh yes,
on a Sunday night, obviously depending on the football schedule. So it's the WM32 Football Podcast on YouTube for that as well. And I am on Instagram at Wezo32, following Spurs as often as I can up and down the country.
Oi.
How was that for you? Was that all right?
That was good. That was business. That was well dissected. I like that. No, thank you, Wes. I do really appreciate you coming on. And Connor, thank you once again, my friend. It's been a good one tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my outro isn't going to be as good as Wes's there. I mean, that's like proper professional. So I make silly videos, unfortunately, on TikTok. I know, but I do it anyway. Mainly silly little match day things, not necessarily vlogs, sort of awful puns, awful mugging off everyone at this club, basically, because this club mugs us off. Some passionate rants, wound up a lot of people agreeing with Conte recently. But so I'm mainly on TikTok. I'm on Twitter as well. That's my name on Twitter. Don't ask why it's my name, but it's my name all the same. As always, I will tell everyone, keep smashing that like button for Hollie. Keep backing Hollie. Keep going, because this is fantastic. Every week, different guests. It's fab, and I love it. So, and as always, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. Thank you to everybody else, like I said, that's in the chat. Thank you for watching, tuning in, if you're rewatching, all of that good stuff. Dan, I would have done another hour, but I honestly need a snooze. It's been a long couple of days. I'm not going to tell you why. It's just been long. But no, thank you all. Like I said, Hollie Hotspurs Live. Put it in your diaries for next Tuesday, not Monday, as we play Everton. But until next time, come on, you Spurs.